Es un clásico de la comedia adolescente que terminó de catapultar a Ashton Kutcher y a John William Scott hacia el estrellato. Estuvo levemente inspirada en hechos reales y mucho más cerca de tener una secuela de lo que podemos pensar. En 2009, Ashton Kutcher se reencontró con el guionista Phil Stark y tuvieron una reunión con Fox donde se aprobó una secuela en la que íbamos a ver a los protagonistas perdiendo la sillita del auto de sus bebés. Hasta se pensó hacer un musical de Broadway, pero eso quedó en la nada. ¿Será porque este humor no envejeció tan bien? Sobre eso le pregunté a Phil Stark, el guionista de Hey, ¿dónde está mi auto?
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
These movies were cheap. They sort of, you could make a star instead of hire a star. And that was a big money making. That was very popular. And nowadays, it's changed, not just the nature of comedy and what is funny, which is a whole nother conversation, but also nowadays, for instance, I think that's been replaced by horror movies.
Dude, where's your car?
Dude, it's not funny, dude. The car is gone.
Yeah. Dude, where's my car?
Preface says, I believe it says, the following story is based on actual events. And the reason why is because when I was writing these two characters and coming up with these bits, I was just writing these sort of Marx Brothers, Cheech and Chong kind of scenes with the tattoo and writing these things, but I didn't really know what the plot, the narrative would be for this movie. And then one of my good friends called me up one day because he needed to get a ride because he couldn't find his car. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we'd gone to this bar and he woke up at home and his car wasn't out front. So he came out and he said, where's my car?" So that became the perfect kind of just beginning and end, the sort of the road trip movie to find the car. And once you find the car, the movie's over. So even though they're aliens and all this ridiculous stuff, it was based on that actual event.
Have you seen my car?
Well, I saw the back seat.
Oh, I'm talking about the whole thing.
When the movie sold, I was working on the first season of that 70s show. So I knew Ashton. And Ashton was just starting out. This was his first big role, this TV show, 70s show. And the producer, once it became clear we were going to be in production on the movie, called me one day and said, "Hey, who is this Ashton kid? Is he funny? Because we're considering him for the role." And I said, "He's amazing. He's hilarious. He's perfect." And he was all of those. And so it's not like I said to the producers, "Hey, we got to get this guy." It just was a nice coincidence that Ashton was in a place where he would be perfect for the role, and I happened to be working with him on this TV show, so we had that relationship already. It was funny. Once Tommy Chong came in and started playing this role of Leo on the 70s show, it was always very fun because he had that kind of stoner humor that I personally had loved and was an inspiration for Dude, Where's My Car? So it was awesome writing for him.
You mentioned Tommy Chong. I talked with him about him being involved in that 70s show. Did you talk with him about these movies?
Well, no, listen, Tommy Chong was like I said, I'm such a big fan of the movies, but when you see him in person, he's perpetually stoned. He's a wonderful guy, but hard to have an in-depth conversation with.
Where were you between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m.?
We don't remember. Hey, leave him alone. He doesn't know anything.
The original script was a very R-rated, very like grown-up kind of movie. And then in the course of production, it became clear that this needed to be for teenagers. So it's interesting that in this is maybe not what I regret the most, but in the original script, they're smoking weed the whole time. They're bongs, there's giant joints. There's a lot, you actually see it. But that got cut down. So by the end, in the actual movie, the only person who actually smokes any marijuana is the dog.
Yeah.
Right? So I wouldn't say I regret that, but it's interesting to see how so much changed from the original script to the final version.
We are the recipients of instructions from outer space. Last night, you were in possession of the Continuum Transfunctioner.
I started with the biggest, craziest thing, which was aliens had to come back and get the Continuum Transfunctioner. So we start with the craziness and we go backwards from there. And it sort of made it a natural to have a cult of people who insist there are aliens who are dismissed, who are in the end validated. And so that made sense just to have that group. And then from there, it was just a matter of what seemed funny. Bubble wrap jumpsuits, great. They can pop it. They can be annoyed popping it.
We are finally going to fulfill our prophecy of outer space travel.
I believe it was Hal Sparks or one of the other actors who came up with this Z thing. I did not write that. I did not write, and then they put their fingers in a Z shape. They just came up with that, which is the wonderful thing about the collaborative nature of filmmaking, which is if you have the right environment and a positive director, producer, writer who are all willing to hear creative opinions from the whole spectrum, they came up with that, and it ended up being this huge thing that that really caught on. One of the many little bits that people remember from the movie. But no, I didn't write that. That was improvised.
You got a tattoo!
So do you, dude.
What does my tattoo say?
Sweet! What about mine?
Dude, what does mine say?
This is a cult comedy, a cult teen comedy. Why would you say this happened with this film?
Yeah, I think it's because there are just a lot of memorable and funny bits. Like the Zoltan thing, the tattoo thing. I mean, I see people with tattoos of dude and sweet, and the and then scene. Now I have friends who, when they can't, they ask a question, they say and then, and then. And even just saying, dude, where's my car is sort of this thing that happens in everyday life, but yet there's a movie about it. So I think people who see it, especially with comedies, a lot of cult movies are comedies. I think it's because they have very funny, specific bits and moments that people then not only remember, but find ways to apply to their everyday life going forward.
I read that there was a sequel called Seriously, Dude, Where's My Car? What happened to that? Was this?
Well,
what stage was it?
Right. Well, there was never, once the movie was made, there wasn't much of a push to make a sequel right away. But I did write one, and it was always called Seriously, Dude, Where's My Car? And I wrote a version that was sort of a spring break movie where the dudes have to go down and save the hotel that their uncle left to them, and a trope building off the classic 1980s spring break movies. And that didn't end up getting made. And then about 10 years later, Ashton and I reconnected, and then maybe we were going to do a version where it was called Dude, Where's My Car Seat, which was about the dudes, like, now they're married and they're getting ready to have kids and it's the big day, but oh no, where's the car seat that I bought? And then it's all about that. And then there was even talk of maybe doing a musical, Dude, Where's My Car, the musical, that we developed a little bit too. So we've developed various versions of the sequels, but a sequel never ended up getting made.
Which one was the closest one to have in reality?
I think the car seat one, because we actually met at Fox. We shook hands with the studio chief. I was going to start writing the movie, but then for some reason I don't know why these things, it's weird. As a writer, I'm not always privy to the politics of why things really get made or not, because it's very often not about the validity or the value of the script. It's about the politics or the economic environment. So I can't say for sure why, but I think that was probably the closest one.
It's llama. Stand very still.
And do you think we still have these kind of comedies, like, or they changed? Because
well, it's interesting because it's the 25th anniversary this year. So I'm actually writing a piece for The Ringer, a website, about what has changed in 25 years. And 25 years ago, teen comedies, box office, like low budget, that demographic, that was the bullseye. And that's just been a business change, but also a cultural change. But also, right, what is considered funny now has changed as well. So there are still similar comedies, but especially with the way that the box office has taken a backseat to streaming and social media, the idea of making a low budget movie on a network, a studio level, is just not as valuable, I think, as it was 25 years ago, whether it's a comedy or not.
To find out what they did and who they did it to.
Dude, you're a dude!
Do you think you could have made this movie now, or or what do you have to change for this film to?
Well, for instance, I rewatched the movie recently, and there's a lot of jokes that are at the expense of people who are transgender, people who are gay, Fabio. There's a lot of poking fun at groups that nowadays if I was writing this, I would not want to poke fun at. And I struggle a little bit with the idea that I could have written something that now I cringe at so much. But I think that just speaks to the nature of comedy, how things have changed. I mean, 25 years before Dude came out, Blazing Saddles came out, which was just as aggressive, or maybe even more so, in terms of joking about race and ethnicity and culture. And 25 years in the future, who knows what we'll be laughing at. Certainly what we laugh at in culture changes over the years, but in general, I think comedy is often transgressive. Often we laugh because we know we're not supposed to be laughing at it. So when I watch that movie today, I cringe at some of the things, but I try not to feel so bad because I know at the time it felt right. And now I can appreciate how I would do it differently if I were doing it.